The crossing guard who makes every child smile daily never knew one would name a school after her someday, but Eleanor Marsh had long ago stopped expecting life to deliver anything resembling recognition. Her weathered hands gripped the worn stop sign as the first light of dawn cracked across the horizon, painting the suburban intersection in hues of amber and gold. 63 years old, with silver hair tucked beneath a neon yellow cap and crow's feet that deepened when she smiled, which was often, Eleanor had been guiding children safely across Maple Street for nearly 2 decades. The cold bit through her gloves as she stamped her feet against the pavement, her breath forming delicate clouds that vanished into the December air. Her joints ached in protest, arthritis stealing a little more mobility each winter, but Eleanor refused to surrender her post. Not when the children needed her, not when their smiles were sometimes the only warmth she felt all day. Eleanor's small apartment sat empty most hours, the silence broken only by the ticking of a clock that had belonged to her mother. Photos lined the walls, memories of a husband long past, a daughter who had moved across the country with grandchildren Eleanor saw twice yearly if fortune smiled. The crossing guard uniform hanging on her bedroom door was the closest thing to purpose she had discovered in her widowhood. "Mornin', Miss Ellie," called Mr. Simmons from the corner coffee shop, lifting his cup in salute as he did every weekday at 7:15 a.m. Eleanor waved back, her smile genuine but not quite reaching the depths of her eyes. The neighborhood knew her as the eternally cheerful crossing guard, and she carefully maintained that image. No one needed to know about the unpaid heating bill on her kitchen counter, or the nights she spent rubbing ointment into her swollen knees, wondering how much longer her body would allow her to keep this job. By 7:30, the first wave of children appeared, backpacks bouncing and mittened hands clutching lunchboxes. Eleanor straightened her posture, ignoring the twinge in her lower back. "Good morning, sunshine," she called to a pair of giggling twins who skipped toward the crosswalk. "Those matching hats are absolutely marvelous. Did your mom make them?" The girls beamed and nodded enthusiastically, and Eleanor felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was why she rose before dawn, why she endured the cold and the pain. For the light that appeared in children's eyes when someone, anyone, took notice of them. "Arms out like airplanes," she instructed as she always did, lifting her stop sign high. "That's it. Fly safe to the other side." The girls extended their arms and zoomed across, their delight momentarily washing away the persistent ache in Eleanor's heart. But as the morning progressed and children streamed toward Jefferson Elementary, Eleanor noticed a boy she hadn't seen before. He hung back from the others, hood pulled low over his face despite the biting cold. His shoulders curled inward, as if trying to make himself smaller, less noticeable in the world. Eleanor recognized that posture, the physical manifestation of carrying a weight too heavy for young shoulders. When the final stragglers approached the crosswalk, the boy remained on the corner, staring at his worn sneakers. The second bell would ring soon. "Hello there," Eleanor called gently, lowering her sign. "Need to cross?" The boy's head remained bowed, but he shuffled forward. When he reached the edge of the crosswalk, Eleanor caught a glimpse of his face beneath the hood. A purplish bruise bloomed across his left cheekbone, his eyes rimmed red. Something inside her chest tightened. She'd seen that look before, had worn it herself as a child. "First day?" she asked, her voice softening to a whisper meant only for him. A barely perceptible nod. "Well, I'm Miss Eleanor, but the kids call me Miss Ellie. I've been helping children cross this street safely for 17 years. And do you know what?" The boy finally glanced up, curiosity momentarily overwhelming his guardedness. "I've never lost a single one," she said with a wink. Perfect safety record. No smile appeared, but something in his posture loosened slightly. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked as they waited for a car to pass. "Michael," he mumbled, so quietly she almost missed it. "Michael," she repeated warmly. "That was my father's name. He always said it was a name for someone special." The boy's eyes flickered to her face, searching for insincerity, finding none. "Ready to cross, Michael? Special rule for first days? You get to hold the sign with me." His eyebrows lifted in surprise, but when she extended the pole slightly toward him, his small hand cautiously wrapped around it beneath hers. Together they stepped into the crosswalk, Eleanor matching her pace to his hesitant steps. "There now," she said when they reached the other side. "Safe and sound just as promised." For the briefest moment, the corner of Michael's mouth twitched upward, not quite a smile but the possibility of one. Eleanor felt it like sunshine breaking through clouds. "See you this afternoon, Michael," she called as he walked toward the school entrance. He didn't respond, but his steps seemed a fraction lighter than before. That night, as Eleanor soaked her feet in warm water, wincing at the shooting pain in her ankle, she found herself thinking about the boy with the bruised face. In her 43 years of working with children, 17 as a crossing guard, and 26 before that as a school cafeteria worker, she had seen the signs too many times. The withdrawn posture, the unexplained injuries, the wariness that no child should have to carry. Sleep eluded her, memories of her own childhood surfacing like debris after a storm. Her father's unpredictable rages, her mother's perpetual fear, the isolation of carrying secrets no child should bear. Eleanor had survived, had eventually found happiness with Robert before cancer claimed him. But the scars remained, invisible but present, like fault lines beneath seemingly solid ground. The next morning, frost coated the grass, and Eleanor's bones protested more violently than usual. 3 ibuprofen with breakfast dulled the edge, but not enough. Still, she arrived at her post 15 minutes early, scanning the approaching children for one particular hooded figure. Michael appeared last again, hanging back until the crowd thinned. Today, the bruise had darkened to a deeper purple, and he held his right arm carefully against his body. Eleanor's heart constricted. "Good morning, Michael." She greeted him, pretending not to notice his wince as a boisterous 5th grader bumped past him. "I saved you a special crossing just like yesterday." This time she didn't offer the sign, but instead reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out a small paper bag. "My husband Robert used to say that peppermints make everything a little better," she said, holding out the bag. "I thought you might like one for your first week." Michael stared at the offering, confusion evident in his eyes. "It's okay," Eleanor assured him. "Just a little welcome present." After a moment's hesitation, he accepted the bag, carefully tucking it into his jacket pocket. "Thank you," he whispered, the words barely audible over the morning traffic. "You're very welcome, Michael," she replied. "Ready to cross?" As they walked side by side across the street, Eleanor noticed how he matched his steps to hers, staying close enough that their shadows merged on the pavement. It was a small thing, perhaps meaningless to anyone watching, but to Eleanor, it felt like the first delicate tendril of trust. "See you this afternoon," she called as he walked away. This time he glanced back, giving her the smallest of nods. Days became weeks, and slowly, Michael began to arrive earlier, lingering at Eleanor's crossing until the final bell warning. She never pressed him to talk, never asked about the bruises that appeared and faded like cruel constellations across his skin. Instead, she offered small kindnesses, a peppermint, a joke, stories about the neighborhood squirrels she had named, observations about the changing seasons. In February, during a particularly bitter cold snap, she noticed Michael shivering in his thin jacket. "Where are your gloves today?" she asked as they waited for the light to change. He shrugged, shoving his reddened hands deeper into his pockets. Without hesitation, Eleanor removed her own gloves, thick, wool-lined ones that Robert had given her years ago. "Here," she said, holding them out. "Borrow these." "I can't," Michael protested, his eyes widening. "Your hands will get cold." "I have hand warmers in my pockets," she lied smoothly. "And I'll be moving around all day. You need them more than I do." After school, he tried to return them, but Eleanor shook her head. "Keep them until spring," she insisted. "Consider it a loan." That night, her fingers burned and throbbed as circulation returned, but Eleanor found she didn't mind. The memory of Michael's face when he slipped his small hands into the 2 large gloves was worth every moment of discomfort. March brought the first hints of spring and a revelation. As Eleanor helped a kindergartner tie her shoelace before crossing, she overheard 2 teachers talking. The Sullivan boy, such a sad case. Mother died last year. Father's drinking got worse after. CPS has been called twice, but nothing sticks. Where does he go when his father works nights? Stays alone, I think. Only 10 years old. Eleanor's hands trembled as she raised her sign, pieces falling into place. Michael, alone in a house with a grieving, volatile father. Michael, making himself breakfast, putting himself to bed, tending his own wounds. That afternoon, when Michael appeared for the crossing home, Eleanor had made a decision. "Michael, I was wondering, would you like to help me feed the birds in the park someday? I go every Saturday morning. The chickadees eat right from your hand if you're patient enough." His eyes lit with interest before doubt clouded them. "I don't think my dad would let me." "Well," Eleanor said carefully, I'll be there at 9 a.m. by the big oak tree if you ever want to join me. No pressure." That Saturday, Eleanor sat on a park bench, a bag of birdseed in her lap, not really expecting anything. When a small figure appeared on the path, Hood pulled up despite the mild weather. Her heart skipped. "You came?" she said, unable to keep the delight from her voice. Michael shifted from foot to foot. "Just for a little while? Dad's sleeping." "That's perfect. Come sit." For 2 hours they sat together, scattering seeds, watching chickadees dart and dive. When a brave bird finally landed on Michael's outstretched palm, his face transformed, eyes wide with wonder, mouth open in a silent gasp of delight. When he turned to Eleanor, his smile was like witnessing a rare celestial event. "Did you see?" he whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break the magic. "I did," she whispered back, her own smile mirroring his. "You're a natural." That Saturday became the first of many. Some weeks Michael couldn't come. Those were the weeks when new bruises appeared and his eyes held that distant, shuttered look. But more often than not, he would be waiting by the oak tree, sometimes with stories from school, sometimes with silent companionship. Eleanor never pushed, never pried, but she listened when he spoke and respected his silence when he couldn't. She shared stories of her own childhood, carefully edited, and about Robert, about her daughter in California, about the loneliness that sometimes felt like a physical presence in her apartment. "I get lonely too," Michael admitted one day in late April, his fingers tracing patterns on the wooden bench. "Sometimes I talk to my mom's picture when Dad's not home. I think she must love hearing your voice," Eleanor said gently. "Do you think—" he began, then stopped, biting his lip. "What, sweetheart? Do you think she can see me? From heaven?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "I believe she can. I think she's watching over you every day. Even when bad things happen." His voice had dropped to a whisper. Eleanor covered his small hand with her weathered one. "Especially then." Summer vacation brought new challenges. Without the structure of school crossings, Eleanor worried about Michael. She took on extra hours as a mall crossing guard, but the schedule was different, the routine disrupted. One sweltering July afternoon, her doorbell rang, something that happened so rarely she almost didn't recognize the sound. When she opened the door, Michael stood on her step, a darkening bruise encircling his eye, his lips split and swollen. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, his voice breaking. "He's really mad today." Eleanor ushered him inside without hesitation, her heart hammering against her ribs. As she gently cleaned his wounds with antiseptic, her mind raced through options, consequences, risks. She knew what the right thing was, what the law required, but she also knew the system's failures intimately. "Michael," she said finally, setting down the first aid kit. "I think we need to call someone who can help." Fear flashed across his face. "No, they'll take me away. Put me in a home. Please, Miss Ellie." "What if," she said carefully, "there was another option? Someone who could take care of you? Someone you know?" Michael's brow furrowed in confusion. "Me," Eleanor clarified, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. "I could apply to be your foster parent." The words hung between them, enormous in their implication. Eleanor hadn't planned this, hadn't considered what it would mean for her quiet life, her limited income, her aging body. Yet, as soon as the offer left her lips, she knew with bone-deep certainty that it was right. "You would do that?" Michael whispered, disbelief and fragile hope mingling in his voice. "In a heartbeat," she answered truthfully. What followed were months of paperwork, home visits, background checks, and court appearances. Eleanor learned about the complexities of the foster system, about Michael's father's struggles with alcohol and grief, about the legal processes that determined a child's future. She worked extra shifts to afford a lawyer, rearranged her small apartment to create a bedroom for Michael, attended parenting classes for foster applicants. There were setbacks, her age raised concerns, her income was deemed questionable. Michael's father initially fought the placement. There were nights Eleanor lay awake, terrified she had offered hope she couldn't deliver, promised safety she couldn't guarantee. But there were victories too. Character references poured in from the school, from parents whose children she had guided safely for years, from Mr. Simmons at the coffee shop and the librarian who had watched her read to Michael every Thursday afternoon. Her perfect attendance record at work, her consistent community involvement, her deep connection with the boy, all worked in their favor. By Christmas, the temporary emergency placement became a long-term fostering arrangement. Michael's father agreed to treatment, to supervised visitation, to working toward healing while his son stayed with Eleanor. The night they hung ornaments on a small tree in Eleanor's, their apartment, Michael placed a handmade star on top, stretching to reach even on tiptoes. "There," he said, stepping back to admire his work. "Now it's perfect." Eleanor watched him, this boy who had somehow become the center of her world in less than a year. "Yes," she agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "Perfect." As the seasons turned again, their life together found its rhythm. Eleanor continued her crossing guard duties while Michael attended school, his grades improving steadily, his circle of friends slowly expanding. There were still difficult days, nightmares that left him crying out for his mother, visits with his father that sometimes went well and sometimes didn't, Eleanor's occasional health scares that terrified them both. But there were beautiful days too, Michael joining Eleanor at her post on special occasions, proudly helping younger children cross, weekend trips to the beach where they collected shells and built elaborate sandcastles, quiet evenings when they read books side by side, the silence comfortable and safe. When Michael turned 13, Eleanor helped him start a kindness project at school, a student crossing guard program where older students helped kindergartners navigate the hallways. "Everyone needs someone to help them cross safely sometimes," he explained to his principal, Eleanor beaming proudly beside him. The years passed more quickly than Eleanor could have imagined. Michael grew taller than her by 14, his voice deepened, his interests expanded to include basketball and robotics club. His father maintained sobriety, their relationship healing gradually through consistent effort on both sides. Eleanor's daughter visited more frequently, drawn by the unexpected expansion of their family, bringing cousins for Michael to bond with. Eleanor's body continued its slow betrayal, a hip replacement at 68, arthritis that eventually forced her retirement from crossing guard duties at 70. Michael, then 17, organized a community-wide retirement party that brought together hundreds of children she had guided safely over the decades. "Miss Ellie kept us safe?" one parent testified, her own children now grown. "Rain or shine, she was there with a smile and a kind word. She didn't just help us cross streets, she taught us how to move through the world with kindness." Eleanor wept openly as former students, now adults with children of their own, shared stories of how her small kindnesses had brightened difficult days, how her consistent presence had provided stability when little else did. But the greatest surprise came when Michael took the microphone, now a confident young man preparing for college. 8 years ago, I was a scared, hurt kid who thought the world had nothing good left to offer, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "Miss Ellie didn't just help me cross the street, she helped me cross from darkness into light. She showed me that family isn't just about blood, it's about who makes space for you when you have nowhere else to go." Eleanor covered her mouth with trembling hands as Michael continued. "That's why I'm proud to announce that I've been working with the school board and city council. Next year, when the new elementary school opens on Willow Street, it will be named the Eleanor Marsh Academy of Compassionate Learning." The crowd erupted in applause as Michael crossed the room to embrace the woman who had changed his life, the crossing guard who had made not just him, but every child smile, never knowing that one day one of them would name a school after her. Years later, long after Eleanor had passed peacefully in her sleep at 82, Michael, now Dr. Michael Sullivan, child psychologist, would visit the elementary school that bore her name. In the front hallway hung a large photograph of Eleanor in her crossing guard uniform, stop sign held high, her face creased in that familiar smile that had warmed so many cold mornings. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Eleanor Marsh believed that everyone deserves safe passage through the difficult crossings of life. She taught us that sometimes the smallest kindnesses create the safest paths forward." And every morning, as children entered the building, they passed beneath these words, many reaching up to touch the frame for good luck, a tradition whose origin was forgotten, but whose meaning endured. In this way, Eleanor continued to guide children safely forward long after her crossing duties had ended. In the school courtyard, chickadees still gathered at feeders that Michael maintained, sometimes eating from the outstretched hands of patient children who had learned that kindness, like love, multiplies when shared.